Hey, going
But
like
what's even
this?
cooler is we can put it in, and then you can adjust the outside with these
Hope you're having a good
arms,
morning.
and you can make it
Grand
so that the
rising.
magnet can come through.
Good day, sir, ma'am. Yeah, let's get this one.
And
We're
when you do
watching
that,
Occult Rejects.
there's nothing in the middle. Okay,
A little bit of white
you see,
mirror.
there's like a stop here where the magnet it
Yeah,
sticks
scribble.
when they're even on the end of the magnet. But when you go past
Might
that,
mix it with some
there's this
ABV.
area between the poles where nothing happens. And that's very important because when you take the magnets and you add more and more magnets, like this, see how it's many pieces that come apart and then they put together, and every time you add a magnet, it becomes one magnet. But when you do that, you're separating the poles farther and farther apart. And this is really crucial for a lot of my designs because if you start changing the way that you solve problems from doing it with the field to doing it with the magnet, you can accomplish a lot of things. So, for instance, when you take the magnet and you pull it through, it shoots it out the other side because the forces repel. Okay? And I think that we can use this in combination of having something like this with pinched magnetism and then an electromagnet on the other side. We can spin this and crank up the electromagnet, and as long as they stay separated, it will create an inertia vector that just pulls the whole entire device. And then we can use it just like a motor.
Okay.
And that's like the whole basis of all of my papers, is that static electricity and magnetism are one and the same thing, but they're different expressions of electrical potential, which is all around us. And it's created by this offset between the magnetism that the Earth is throwing off and the static electricity that the sun is throwing off. And there's a potential there that we can engineer.
William, could you potentially get a snapshot of what this looks like when you glance at electricity and combine it with the way plants grow?
Sorry, say that again. My mic was messing up.
No, you're good. Could you potentially get a snapshot of this interaction by looking at how lightning kind of forms when it strikes, quote unquote, and then looking at how plants grow, and so you have plants almost like an inversion of how lightning comes down, and you have plants going back up, and so you almost can map in a snapshot frame by superposing the two.
So there's two really great devices that go through this. So first of all, with the rain, do you guys know about the thunderstorm generator? I'm sure Nick does. You know about Bendall and the thunderstorm generator.
Pack 'em up.
Okay, so Bendall, we actually saw one at the Cosmic Summit. Some guy had one and showed it to us. And so basically, all this cold, humid air and injects that into your combustion chamber. Okay, and the way Bendall got to this idea is thunderstorms, when they happen, you get this dry pocket of air and then a wet pocket coming into it. And what happens is the same thing that happens when your electric cables, your jumper cables touch. As soon as there's a spark, you have this electric field form around the lightning bolt that squeezes it. And when this squeezes, it's actually squeezing the plastic because water doesn't like magnetism. So when it's created, the water tries to run from it, and when it pulls in, it collapses. Bendall's idea was, let's take the thunderstorm and let's roll it up to the combustion chamber, and then what we'll do is we'll make a sort of lightning filter right there, and it's going to charge up everything in the combustion chamber, and it's just going to burn everything. Now, I don't think that's how it actually works. I think it actually works because basically what you're doing is you're just pumping water into the combustion chamber, and if you pump water in with the gas and the water combusts at like all at once into hydrogen and oxygen and combusts, it will burn up all of the fuel. Okay, so the same thing happens with nitrous. I used to, so my family builds drag cars and drift cars. That was like all I used to do was drift and drag race. And like with the drag, I forget where I was going.
We're talking about
Oh yeah, the nitrous. So with nitrous, what you're doing is you're feeding in extra oxygen.
Nice.
Okay, and the oxygen combusts, but what it really does is it completely burns all of the fuel in your combustion chamber. And the thunderstorm generator is just doing the same thing. It's putting in humid air, and when the spark hits, it combusts it down to oxygen and hydrogen, and it just burns up all the fuel. And then you get this great, you get what looks like no exhaust fumes, except there are some exhaust fumes. And that's why I keep asking Bendall, like, the one thing I want from the thunderstorm generator and I've never gotten is I just simply want to know, is it running lean? How lean is it running? Because, like, from my point of view, if you're just burning up all the gas, that's the same thing that happens when you add too much air to the mixture and then you run lean, and that burns up motors. So if your thunderstorm generator is making the motor run lean and then blowing up the motors faster than what it normally would, it's really not worth very much. So I never got that test. I would still like to see it, but I've never got it.
Is this an electrolysis motor? So it's using the electrolysis to separate the hydrogen and the oxygen to burn them up in the chambers?
No. To ask Bendall about it, it's creating these plasmoids that get in the combustion chamber and then, I don't know, kind of magically give off some kind of thing that makes the motor keep running forever. I've never seen that from anyone that's demonstrated it.
You're going to go buy smokes.
Now, I think it is. Like, in my model, when that spark hits, what you've done is you put water vapor into the chamber. And water vapor is different than, say, like steam. Like, you're not going to combust steam straight up. It's too wet. But if you just make the air that you're pumping in a little bit more humid, well, the spark and then the flame that's created, which is electricity itself, will take care of the job of electrolyzing it. And then it's hot enough, it will combust as soon as it's electrolyzed. And, like, that's what brought me into the thunderstorm generator is I was like, oh, wait a minute, you can just push in wet air and that will get me more power and I can go down the track faster. I want better nitrous. I want water that works like nitrous. But, I haven't tried it, so I don't really know. If I pump it, if I pump super watery air in there, will it still work the same way? Or maybe, like Stanley Meyer did, if you change the shape of your spark plug, to where you have your electrode like this, and then the rest of it around the outside here, you might be able to actually break the water down. But if we're just using a regular spark gap, it never worked. And,
That looks very much like a hydrogen cell, where you put water on one side and then it separates the oxygen from the hydrogen, expels the water on the outside and keeps it,
In my theory, what you're doing here is you're just moving static electricity around. Static electric of one flavor over here that we call watery electric, and then gassy electric, and it's just pumping static around. And, the best way to see this is just look at the old steam engines that work by, like, making the air hot over here, and then the hot air looks for an exit point. We only give it one exit, so it runs over here, and this is a cold environment, and we just pump it around in circles. You can do the same thing with static electricity. And actually, that's exactly what the magnets are doing. And this is a good place to go over this. Ken Wheeler talks about counter space. Have you heard him talk about counter space? He'll say that the magnets create this area of counter space between them, and then that is what the magnets suck to. Okay, I like your idea, but I don't think there's any such thing as counter space. What you're really doing is you're manipulating the electrical potential in the air. Now, in my writing, I have up until this point been calling it static electricity straight up because when I visualize it in my head, the air is full of this electricity, just like static electricity, except it's everywhere. And we grew up in it, so we don't feel it. Like you feel the static electricity coming off of an electrode or off of a balloon that sucks the hair off your head. You don't feel it like that because you've been laying in the bathwater your whole life. You've been in this static electric field, having it make you grow toward the sun and not even realizing it. And, that's what your hair is for. Everybody is the whole evolutionary biologist community is so mystified by body hair. It's it's not mysterious at all, dude. Your body hair responds to electric fields. I mean, that's why it raises up off your body whenever, this or that happens or you see a ghost or whatever. Anytime that you come into some oddity in the electromagnetic field that you're around, your hair stands on them and you get the whirlpool. And that's because you are genuinely reacting to an electromagnetic field. And some electric fields that are the only thing you can feel, you can feel magnetic field. Okay? So if you take a super strong magnet, like these are N52 magnets, and you get it real close but not touching your nose, you can clearly feel the magnetism. It feels just like spider webs.
And I can taste that a little bit in there. Somehow it's seeped into the tobacco.
But in terms of the hair, I would say that the keratin is working in favor of being a receptor for that electricity. So it is a perfect sensor because of the keratin and not because of its shape. But I want to ask you a question back to the plants. Have you ever heard of electroculture?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ken Wood talks about electroculture a lot. I've been working on some fractal antennas, which is just like pieces of copper wire that you shape like a maple leaf, and then you hang out in your garden. I've got my garden growing this year, but it's not doing so hot, so I haven't been able to really get it going because my plants keep dying and rabbits keep getting me. So I haven't actually got to experiment with it yet, but I'm aware.
But they have to work the land with copper tools. You cannot use anything but copper tools to work the land where you're going to do that. Okay.
Yeah, and that's pretty obvious because the electric tools they conduct electricity. And what happens when you move anything conductive through a magnetic field or an electric field? You generate electricity. So when you're jamming this copper, utensil down in the ground, every time you jam it in there, you're mixing everything up and you're moving it around in the potential of its environment. And that's creating electric. And that electric gets, stuck into the soil just like the electrets. And then the electroculture, it works very simple. What you do is you create the positive and negative by burying the stuff down in the ground, which is literally ground, zero potential. And then you hang some, antennas up in the tree above it. And what you're doing is you're creating this static electric gradient where there's zero at the bottom and then say 10 volts up here. And what's happening is the plants are growing through this, reaching for the higher potential. And that's why everything grows faster, is because this static electricity is literally pulling it up. And static or magnetism can only flow in one way, the whirlpool. And it's a whirlpool, and it has to be a whirlpool because electricity is infinitely scalable. Okay? That means that as long as you can move the coil faster or dump in more magnetism, you can make as much electricity as you want. But that comes at a cost. If you're going to have something that's infinitely scalable, then it's also got to be infinitely divisible. And magnets are. Because when you take two magnets apart, you have two magnets. But when you put them back together again, you have one magnet. All right? And there's only one shape in the universe that can do that. And that's the whirlpool. Okay? If you take a tornado or a donut, which is just a tornado turned inside out on itself. So you imagine you have a tornado like this, and then we wrap the tornado around until it goes back on itself. That's
a torus, basic torus.
Yeah. Either way, if you chop that shape in half, you end up with the same shape. So the torus and the whirlpool are infinitely divisible. So it's got to be that the electricity moves in whirlpool fashions. And actually, you see this in the new work that's coming out with graphene lattice structures. So they have all these graphene structures that are basically these meshes like this. And I keep telling everyone, you have to learn how to swing nunchucks. And I know everybody thinks I'm joking and it sounds funny and stuff. But listen, there is a reason I keep going on and on about nunchucks. When you tie the weight on an end of a string, and then you swing it around, you are left with but one path to swing it in. Okay? You don't get to just wiggle it around crazy like, you don't get to just, do whatever you want. You have to move in these patterns that are always 8-like, and they always tie into each other like this. See what I mean? It's always this, and then back the other way, and then this way, and around. And that's how all whirlpools move. And it's whirlpools because everything is spinning. We live on a planet that spins in a spinning universe that spins around the sun, that spins around the universe that's spinning around the black hole. It's all spinning. And if you're going to have everything spinning, you're going to get whirlpools absolutely everywhere. And that means what's most important is how do you move between two whirlpools? If you get caught in a whirlpool over here, how do you get loose and over to the one over here? Well, Schauberger taught us how to do that. And this is how Schauberger saw
Kinda
his
good.
theory of everything.
But just
You get these
realize,
meandering streams
go
like
for
this.
walks,
And why do they always meander like this?
waste,
Well, it's because of
buy
whirlpools.
stupid
You get it
shit.
going this way, and it circulates and it
Except
makes
for
a
yesterday.
whirlpool.
A little bit yesterday.
Not a strong
But that's
whirlpool,
one-
okay?
once
The
a week.
ether's about tickling it. Just a little bit of rotation here, okay? And then you follow the nunchuck path. Where does it go next? It goes up and then around this way. And then it goes off this way around here. And then you go that way in the reverses. And you get these streams that have these banks that keep themselves. And they keep themselves because of the rotation. And that was Schauberger's first, that was where he developed his theory of everything and how he ended up getting famous. Because he took this idea, and the German logging industry wanted a way to send logs from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. But the
That's
logs
gonna
wouldn't
hurt.
float
Bloody
good
phone
enough,
bill.
so they'd get piled up, and they'd have to have
906.
people down there
Again,
with
I
sticks,
got this
jam them
last
down. It was
night.
like this whole thing. So they got Schauberger
But I was
was a
walking
forestry
exactly the
person who just
same, and I've
walked
got it this
national
morning.
parks,
This is
basically. He's one of
mine.
those
It's for
guys.
cancer.
And they went to him and they're like,
You made some notes on the spin
Etsy.
and how the water goes around
How trippy is
fish.
that?
And so all
How
of these
trippy is
notes
that
and
stream
watching the
last
different
night
stream
when I was
patterns
talking
and
about
things
wanting
like
to
that,
stay here and
monitoring
shoot some
the
of the
temperature and
Like, it's
the
just true.
radiant energy hitting the water, he was able to create an entire
I haven't even played that back.
geometry
See.
around.
But yeah.
Correct.
I think that's
And
just
that
trippy.
ties directly into the paths of least resistance. Why in the nunchucks? Why is it the fish can sit there right in the middle of the stream and it doesn't even have to move its tail? It can sit perfectly still. Well, it's the same thing with the magnets and like Lagrange points in cosmic physics and stuff. There's a spot in the middle of the stream where the water doesn't move. On one side it's moving this way, on the other side it's moving that way. Just like the magnet, when it comes out of the pole of the magnet, it goes both ways. It goes up and around the magnet like this. And it's the same way everywhere, but in the middle of that spot, okay, in the middle of that rotation, there's a spot that doesn't move, okay?
But
And it's
everything
exactly the same
good
thing
job.
with the magnets, all right? When they get close to each other, what's happening is you're canceling out the fields. All right, and that creates a null spot in the potential of the environment, the electrical potential, and that null
Cavitation
spot.
effect. Cavitation effect. All these scientists like to use that in, oh yeah, that's just the cavitation effect. We don't talk about that. It's like, why don't you talk about it? You just say,
Yeah,
oh,
and then
that's
you
just
tell
the cavitation effect. Well, what is that?
And then they go, and then you're like, okay, well, yeah, okay, it's just the cavitation effect, but then there's this thing called sonoluminescence, where the cavitation effect is making light. Explain that to me. And then their head just explodes and they get mad at you for asking the question. It's like, wait a minute, there's something actually really here. You know, the cavitation thing, this is one of the other experiments I really want to do, is Bob Grenier, he did a presentation about blue steam one day. Blue steam sounds just awesome to me. Like, I have got to get me some of this blue steam, because it sounds just like fuel is what it sounds like. But I think what's going on is it's like soda, right? You take your bottle of soda and shake it up real good, and then you open it, and what happens, you get this huge increase of energy. Well, the same thing is happening with these cavitation devices. They're chopping up the water, for lack of a better word, and they're creating bubbles. Now, I did a bunch of experiments with bubbles, okay? And I think all of them got wiped out in my old account when I got banned on my old account. But I was doing all these experiments with bubbles, okay? Bubbles and lasers, all right? Because I saw this girl online. She did the double experiment by taking a human hair, and then splitting the beam off. And what happens is you get the double slit experiment on the other side. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I can do the double slit experiment with things like hair? Oh my God, hang on a minute. Everything stopped. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to do the double slit experiment with everything that I can run my laser across, like a sight for a gun, right? So the first things I started doing that with was magnets. And that was like my very first experiments where I figured that you can't shoot, okay, if you have the edge of a magnet, right, and then the field is coming off like this, you can't shoot a laser parallel to it. Magnetism won't do anything to it. But maybe if I run the laser along the edge and lay it down like a laser level, then the reflection that comes off of it will show you the magnetism. And sure enough, it did. It did. Like you get this hairy, looped pattern like this. And actually, you can see this pattern on every single tree in the world, okay? Just go to the base of the tree where it pinches, okay? The roots go down like this, then there's a pinch, and then it goes up to the root, or to the leaves, right? In that pinch point, you'll see it wrinkles in. And it'll be wrinkled like horizontally, like this, where the rest of the tree bark is like this. And there's a pattern in there, a crosshatch pattern between the bands like this
Yeah, I
and the
reckon
bark
maybe I
with the
might
bands
start
like
tomorrow,
this.
maybe. I
And
just do
again,
half tomorrow.
that crosshatch pattern
Half a velvet
is
and half a velvet tomorrow
magnetism.
night.
Just like that room we talked about earlier. That crosshatch pattern, that
It's actually having the
round,
normal effect
hairy
now.
pattern that we saw in
So,
this thing from the magnet,
They're trying to
that
get the one
is
at night.
magnetism doing the work. And if you think about it, why is the tree pulling water up anyway? Well, the leaves are up here like a solar panel, and they're pulling in
Into
positive
half
charge,
at night.
and that positive charge is looking for a ground that it's readily available in the roots. And as the electricity slowly makes its way through the tree, the water is slowly being pulled up the tree. And it's going the opposite direction because water is diamagnetic. So if you take like a piece of foam, float it on water, put a cup of water on top of it, then take a magnet, put it beside it, and get it close, it'll push the water away. Okay? And that's very important because when you get current going this way, you get a different vector going that way. And that's the vector that the water's going to look for because it's running from the electrical current. And you can see this because they do experiments where they have like a nozzle for a hose and it's got a stream of water coming out of it, and they put sound there or they put a little electrode there, and then all of a sudden it looks like it's running the opposite way. Well, it's not really running the opposite way. It's still running down, but there's this pattern in it that makes it look like it's going up. And that's what the water's doing in the tree. It's just the tree is built in this funnel fashion that through pressure mediation pushes the water through this venturi, this pinch point above.
It's like a torus, if you imagine it, right? It's open in the bottom,
Yeah,
open in the top.
Right. And it's the same torus that the seed had in it, right? Because you take the seed, which is that little torus shape, and then you put it in the ground where the electrical potential is just millivolts, and it responds to, oh, okay, now there's a potential above me, a gradient. Let's start moving through that. And the first thing it does, it pokes up through the top, and then it makes that pinch. And that pinch is where the seed at, you know,
It's
in the
pretty
middle
wide
of that
awake.
pinch
I had
is
that
basically where the
I've
seed
got to just
ends
stay
up,
awake.
the heart of the tree or whatever.
Would you call that pinch area the node?
Hang on, that was the
So
day.
that when you look at Eve, that stationary point 0, would you call that a
I had a
node?
nap yesterday.
So there's a woman on YouTube named Fractal Woman. Fractal, okay, I am really interested in all the geniuses past. And I got kind of a weird description on what genius is and what it takes to be smart, but I got this really weird thing for geniuses. So I'm always hunting them down and talking to them and then going to find them. And like, ultimately what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have the same epiphany that they had so that I can absorb their theory of everything. Because all of them start with some major epiphany. And it's like literally one epiphany. Oh my God, there's a fish in the river that doesn't move. How the hell is it moving? And that, by just explaining that thing, you get to all this great stuff shouted with it. And everybody has one. There's this woman online that
All those
and
fucking blueberry runs fucked up, but I've still got my CBD.
Is a super,
So,
super duper
well,
genius.
look, right at
okay?
23.
What she did
Lucky
for her
23.
career is she did MRI
CBD
modeling on
and then, I
computers.
don't know,
So
start
MRIs, this is
when
a,
these
this
go,
is a,
which will be soon.
this is such a small skill set. Almost no one in the world has it. And it's the perfect skill set for this line of research. And sure enough, she's got her own theory of everything. And I highly recommend you going and listening to her talk to John Mackin on her channel because they talk about digital gyroscopes, which we'll go over in a minute if you want, but she's a super mega genius. And she calls the area between the holes of the magnet a node. Now, I can't get nodes to work in my vocabulary, but that's what she calls it, and I think she would highly approve of you using that word in this situation.
So would you say, go on, please.
So you're talking about a nucleated field theory of everything field theory.
No, I'm talking about electricity as the model of the universe. Everything is created from electricity, and by electricity, everything keeps going.
No, your way of learning it by going to the geniuses who had that epiphany and then trying to reproduce the epiphany yourself. That would be a nucleated field theory of everything.
I like your vocabulary. The way I think of this is the way Ken Wheeler taught it to me is it's theurgy. Okay? Or you could call it self-apotheosis, maybe. Okay, so you're teaching yourself how to do things by looking at nature, and that's what it comes down to is I'm trying to be the copy ninja, right? If you've got some way that you look in the world and that you design things, I'm going to look at it, instantly reverse engineer it, and pull it into my theory of everything and absorb it. And take the 95% that's good, add it into mine, everything that's not redundant, and just absorb the entire.
No.
And that is theurgy. And it's not just theurgy. You see these guys, have you guys seen these guys online? They all have some AI, and the AI told all of them they're just waking up, they've solved the whole entire world, and the key to it all is recursion. Have you seen this word everywhere? Recursion. They're all talking about recursion. Okay, what the hell is recursion? I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, recursion is what I want everybody to do with my papers. A lot of people ask me, why are you putting out all this intellectual property? Well, first of all, because my brain just works like this, and there's so much of it flooding out all the time that it would just kind of be a shame to not do anything with it and just let it sit. But besides that point, I want you guys to look at what I'm doing, and then I want you to spin it in the way that you think is cool. And do something with it in your own image and your own way, and then show it back to me so that I can go and then I can re-spin your spin, and together we recursively bounce this back and forth. Now, I
like to call that the comparative study discussion. That's what I like to call it. Even with like history, I call it comparative study.
See, and now I draw a line between this and theurgy because all of a sudden now what we're doing is we're playing a game. And I call this game Dialogos. And I call it Dialogos because it is literally the game of dialogue. Notice that in all my papers, I very rarely use math. And if I do use math, it's like a very simple calculation to this is where we're going to cut. Okay? And if you're not just teaching yourself and you're talking to each other and bouncing ideas back and forth, it's no longer self-apotheosis or theurgy. This is a game that we're playing. And ultimately, all of my writing is an invitation to you to come and tell me where I'm wrong. Come tell me what I did wrong. Come use my theory to build your own things, and then show them back to me so that we can play this little game, bounce it back and forth, and ping pong ideas, and we can develop ideas the same way we develop code. Okay, so in my career, I have been a system administrator. Okay, so like, intelligent networks and stuff. But right now I'm running like cable, and I forget where I was going with that. The cable, I can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway.
But tell me one thing. Doesn't this cause a problem in the discussion itself? Because each time someone absorbs someone else's information and adds to its own, it tends to give it its own nomenclature, right? So I'm giving a name for my idea that is basically saying the same thing that the other guys say, but they all have a name for that is different. And then when someone outside goes and look into this, he finds 17 different names for the same thing, right? And thus this becomes alchemy because it's a mass of information where no one knows what they're doing in relation to what really is. So wouldn't it be better for the persons that like you that have this expertise that can conceptualize from imagination to physical property, let's put it that way, I don't know how to say it better, to arrange some form of naming that we all could follow and would be easier even for you to discuss with your peers what you're doing, right? Because everyone has a different name. It's like saying, for instance, I think that the electrical universe presents brilliant solutions to several problems that we cannot solve today. But I think it's a mistake to say that it solves all the problems, because we need a little bit of each thing to explain all that we see. We cannot explain everything from one concept alone, because that concept is ramificated and intertwined to so many other aspects, where it loses itself and ceases to be the main cause because it's another system.
Oops. You don't do that.
Oh, it's fucking stupid.
So in regards to what you are.
Okay.
This is an even worse problem than that. Okay, so I call this the Salvatore Pais Jack Sarfati problem. Okay, so Jack Sarfati and Salvatore Pais had a falling out. Okay, another pair of people that had a falling out like this. Or let's use Ken Wheeler. This is an even worse problem than that. Ken Wheeler and Roger Spurr. So Roger Spurr. Okay, so I call this the Salvatore Pais Jack Sarfati. If you go to his channel. And they had a falling out about light moving and the difference between light and illumination. Roger Spurr thinks light and illumination are the same thing, and it's retarded to think otherwise. Ken Wheeler obviously thinks that light and illumination are very different, moving at very different speeds and could be more different. Well, one of the two, I think it was Roger Spurr, reach out to Ken Wheeler, and we all know Ken Wheeler is a prickly pear, and he did the prickly pear thing to Ken Wheeler, or to Roger Spurr, and now they hate each other, which is a shame, because, like, this one difference is making two of our greatest minds not play the Dialogos game. And that's, like, a huge loss to everyone, and it keeps repeating itself. And ultimately, this comes down to two things. First of all, everybody is making up their own words for everything. Okay? You call it the E field over here, you call it magnetism there, you call it, it's just like all over the place. And I do really have a problem with the people that are making up new words to describe things. And there's a simple way out of that. What you do is, you name things, get this, real complicated, by what they do. If you just name everything by what it does, there won't be any more confusion anymore. We'll all know what we're talking about. And then all these little fights between, Ken Wheeler and Roger Spurr, this will all go away because we'll all realize, actually, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the evil, And this comes into why I put the destruction of esotericism into the notes for this show. So, I see esotericism as being destroyed entirely right now. And while I am on the bandwagon of destroying it and trying to take down every single brick every single day of my life, and I don't want any more secrecy at all, if I had it my way, you would all live your lives publicly all the time, every moment, there would be nothing hidden. All the information out all the time, and everybody would just deal with it. Because until we do that and crush out esotericism, these problems with vocabulary will continue. Because why is everybody changing the vocabulary in the first place? Because they don't want everybody else to know their secret. If you don't know my secret, I have a power over you. And I can use that power over you. And I can manipulate you with that power. And if you learn my little secret and have my epiphany and teach yourself, I can't monetize it anymore. See what I mean? And this needs to be stamped out. We can't have this anymore. We can't have this. Companies buy up the best ideas and then set them back on the shelf and say, no, nobody gets to play with that toy anymore. That toy belongs to me. Nobody else. My toy. No, you're not allowed to have one. No, we're not doing that. We have to destroy it. And thankfully, we finally have the weapon to do it.